finally, onto our next law-explicit song for this era, Navigating. For our 9th song on the album, it finally reintroduces us to that taste of trench many people were anticipating for this era, whilst also providing yet another new perspective on the pursuit of coping with mental health through its lyrics. This video is going to be structured a little differently to the other analyses I've already done. It's going to be more like how the Overcompensate analysis was structured. I'll first start with explaining the music video before dissecting the lyrics. Before we start the video, I'd like to give my usual disclaimer that this is my own interpretation of the song. I'm not claiming that my analysis is the correct or only one. Secondly, this video will feature sensitive content regarding mental health and grief. So if that's something that potentially upsets you, please do click off of the video. There will be links placed in the description for any support you need. You're not alone. Please stay alive. The music video kicks off from where we left Clancy at the end of the Overcompensate music video, so that's really the only prerequisite to understanding the events of Navigating, although I doubt that many of you haven't yet watched the Overcompensate MV. In comparison to the previous and later Law music videos, Navigating is incredibly simple in premise, more like a bridge between two incredibly detailed events in the story. There's not much symbolism or Easter eggs, just a point A to B. Clancy, after rowing across the Paladin Strait and back to Trench, is greeted by 3 banditos, who then lead him through rugged forest terrain, occasionally being helped by the torchbearer during difficult areas. After a bit more of this, the group eventually reaches a clearing marked by a giant bonfire. This is where the big twist for the music video is revealed, that the torchbearer that has been with Clancy since Skeld and IC wasn't the real torchbearer. We see the real TB hand Clancy his mask from Overcompensate, and the video pans out, revealing all the banditos that have come to meet Clancy. As I said, it's a video that aims to tell a very simple event, and it also takes the lyrics quite literally. Clancy is navigating through the rough terrain of Trench, holding on to Torchbearer in order to cope with the arduous terrain and push on through, despite him actually being alone and in need of more palpable assistance this entire time. And to some degree, the lyrics represent an apology to the banditos for taking so long. He's apologising for taking so long not only to return to them, find his way home, but also for taking so long in deciding whether he wants to take on the mantle of leader. He's been navigating his mental struggles that have been leaving him feeling alone, uncertain and doubtful of himself ever since he was first brought back by the bishops from Trench. Despite this very simplistic and straightforward approach though, there are some features that require some more explanation, as well as some important details. Firstly, Torchbearer. It's important to establish that the Torchbearer with Clancy during Psy isn't a figment of Clancy's imagination. Tyler actually explains this in the live stream.
That we call his ability to guide. And so that's why there is kind of like a triangular existence of him. But I will say, to clear it up, the Bandito Torchbearer is the real one.
So to sum up, Josh created this spirit-like version of himself through his power of guidance. Another thing that's important to talk about is the use of My Blood at the end of the music video. The principles of its music video and lyrics are reflected here in Navigating. The idea of someone assisting you in your fight to simply survive in life, not actually being physically there with you. The idea that the banditos will stay with Clancy. He no longer needs to run now that he is reunited with a group that's basically his family, and the rebellion has begun. This reassurance to Clancy that he was never truly alone. No one deserted his fight, and they were waiting for him all along. My Blood helps to emphasize these ideas in Navigating in case you missed them. These last 2 sentiments are actually backed up by the Torchbearer's letter in the FPE exhibit, where he assures Clancy that he had always been with him, and that the rebellion will assist him in whatever he wishes to do. From these bigger details, there are also some smaller ones worth noting. For example, the breaks we have away from the story to Tyler and Josh performing in a field, bonfires lit behind them. Firstly, it's just a really cool visual that encapsulates the state of the rebellion this era. Remember, the banditos are associated with imagery of natural light and fire through the torches they carry and their slogans being associated with the rising sun. Previously, whenever we've seen fire associated with them, it's been their torches and small campfires. Now we have fully fledged bonfires that signify how big their movement has gotten, but also how powerful they've become. Secondly, bonfires are symbolic of the process of rebirth, which could be in reference to Clancy's own transformation from Skeld and Icy to this era. As stated in the psychokinesis letter, he was feeling like a weapon just to be used, whilst in letter 02203 Moon 17, Clancy quite literally follows the torchbearer, uncertain and full of questions. Every time we have seen Clancy during this story, he has fundamentally been a follower. He follows Nico, he follows the Banditos. In Overcompensate, we finally see him step up and accept that mantle of leader. The imagery of rebirth shows Clancy, now reunited with the Banditos, can finally complete the metamorphosis and truly take the title of leader of the Banditos, no longer satisfied with being a follower, but the one who the people follow in this rebellion. Navigating lyrically isn't really a lore-heavy song. It's not like Overcompensate that features several references to the story, provides exposition to the world or certain events, or even foreshadows what is to come next. It's why I've outlined how the lyrics complement the music video rather than add to our understanding of this world in the previous section. This is quite literally as far as it goes. However, despite the pilots not adding to the extremely limited information on what navigating can tell us in the Clancy pre-release livestream, with a bit of work, there is a far more insightful and detailed message from a non-lore perspective that links to this era's main themes of learning to cope with mental health. Navigating is about trying to cope with loss and isolation. Ironically, just like how the Next Semester music video begins with a snippet of navigating, a detail which doesn't actually add to the meaning of navigating in any way, Tyler stated it was his least favourite from the album, and so the very mild response from the crowd in that music video was a way to reflect his own internal thoughts on it. Thanks, Tyler. This song was a lot better than what you give it credit for. Navigating takes a lot of lyrical inspiration from Next Semester. It pretty much utilises very similar linguistic techniques, such as verse length, pronunciation, and semantic fields to convey its meaning. For example, as aforementioned, navigating is about coping with loss and isolation, and it firstly conveys this with a semantic field for this theme throughout the song: alone, leaves, lost. It's mentioned once in at least every verse, implying that he constantly feels alone, consumed by these feelings of isolation. Meanwhile, the bridge repeats the phrase, "everybody leaves," 4 times, again suggesting that this is all he thinks about and feels. He's fixated on this sense of loss and the loneliness it brings him. The lyrics then go on to explore this theme more in depth by detailing 2 ways in which Tyler suffers from this sense of loss. There is loss caused by suffering from grief, and a sense of loss from feeling disconnected from others. The first verse starts off with "I can't seem to turn the page." Allusions to the Dema story aside, turning over a page is an idiom used to refer to leaving a difficult period behind. Tyler can't seem to leave a difficult period that he has suffered behind. He can't move on, a sentiment often associated with the grieving process. This idea is then repeated in a few lines after, "I know you see me standing still." Again, he isn't moving forward, he's stuck in place, unable to move on from the loss he has suffered. And this is so obvious that other people are aware of this, and Tyler himself is aware other people know he is struggling. Then, in the bridge, Tyler states, "My dad just lost his mum." It's an obvious and open statement about someone in his family passing away, someone that he tries to distance his connection to in order to better cope with the effects of grief. It's his grandmother, after all, but he merely refers to her as his dad's mother, creating that distance between him and her as if to try and soften the blow. We then see this disconnect from others, likely friends and family, that also add to these feelings of loss and loneliness. Tyler states in the chorus, "Disassociate, I'm navigating my head." Disassociate as a verb means to disconnect from something. Meanwhile, to navigate is to find your way in a place that is unknown to you. Tyler is ultimately trying to find his way through a mind burdened by the loss of friends and family. He's separated, mentally disconnected from other people whilst he tries to navigate his head alone, which results in him being completely isolated both physically and in his mind, mapping out internal struggles that he is only contributing to more. Finally, Tyler ends the bridge off with, "And now I'm trying to hold on to you because everybody leaves." Not only does the phrase of "everybody leaves" add to this idea of being isolated from other people by them physically leaving his life, by means that aren't just exclusively death, but to hold on to something is to stop someone from moving, keep them close. He's actively trying to create, forcefully maintain connection to prevent becoming disconnected from others and isolated. It reveals Tyler's desperation for the company of someone, anyone, to not be alone again. He is trying to cope with these extreme feelings of loss, however, although in true Clancy fashion, this coping mechanism isn't healthy. From backslide with masking to vignette with diction, in navigating, Clancy tries to cope by disassociating. He quite literally states this in the chorus as something he does when trying to navigate his internal struggles. Disassociation is the mental process of disconnecting from one's own thoughts, feelings, memories, or identity. It's quite literally described by some as an out-of-body experience, and can often happen for a myriad of different reasons. Although the most important reason here is that it's the mind's way of trying to cope with stressful or traumatic events. Tyler's bouts of disassociation are a way of coping with loss and isolation, something stressful or traumatic for him. We quite literally see symptoms of disassociation throughout the song. "My oh my" is a common turn of phrase used to express surprise or shock, highlighting a disconnect from his surroundings, as he's surprised at how quickly time has gone, time that he hasn't been registering. Don't know how long it's been. The first verse describes Tyler feeling a haze around his face that results in feelings of loneliness. A haze can refer to a mental state of confusion, whilst haze is also a form of mist that obscures the sight. Seeing the world as foggy or hazy is a symptom of derealization disorder, a form of dissociative disorder. This first verse ends on "When our fingers touch, I feel my way back home." Feeling your way back home almost implies that Tyler isn't just lost, but he's almost blind in a way. Blinded by his grief and loneliness, blinded by his confusion and complete disconnect from himself caused by disassociation. The only way to ground and guide him is through physical touch, the one thing that can help him not only feel connected to himself again, but also connected to other people once again. Then turn so cold. Being cold is also often associated with feeling numb, which is yet another symptom of derealization disorder. There's also a lack of first-person pronouns at the beginning of some of the lines. Don't know how, disassociate, feel in the reality, which suggests this idea of Tyler almost not being present in the main body of lyrics, not being in control, mimicking that idea of not feeling present in one's own body when disassociating. There's a semantic field of uncertainty, repetition of the verb feel, and negative auxiliary verbs, which present this idea of being uncertain of his own reality, his own feelings and own knowledge, which are all symptoms of disassociation. Whilst this little bit of analysis isn't a symptom, the staccato pronunciation of lyrics in the intro and chorus quite literally create an audible disconnect in the words, reflecting this idea of Tyler disassociating and becoming disconnected. Not only are we seeing disassociation have the negative impact generally of causing Tyler to have a disconnect from his surroundings, causing confusion or shock, and a disconnect from his person in general, but it quite literally adds to the issue he's trying to cope with in the first place. Makes me feel all alone. This unhealthy coping mechanism isn't just essentially burdening him in some way, but it's quite literally adding to the problem he's using it to try and solve. It's not helpful. Like with many of the other songs in Clancy, this problem is represented as a cycle Tyler cannot break out of in his current state, largely thanks to his faulty coping mechanisms. I am wasting all this time. To waste is to squander something, meaning that he hasn't made any progress whilst disassociating to try and sort out, navigate the problem in his head. He's stuck in this cycle. There's also the usual structural techniques that signify this, enjambment keeping the lines flowing and collected, as well as a cyclical ending with the last line being a repeat of the first line. This isn't the only cycle featured in the song. There's also a cycle of feeling desperate for company, for help, but a hesitation to reach out. This desperation is quite obvious in the chorus lyric, "Give me some advice." Give being an imperative, an instruction that highlights his need for help in order to overcome the issue. He needs advice on how to break this cycle. There are also shorter verses, irregular rhyme schemes, plosives and colloquialisms, which all add to this idea that he's emotional, desperate, and in need of a solution to his problems that he can't control. Then, as aforementioned, the usage of "I'm navigating my head" implies that he's trying to navigate the problems in his mind alone instead of reaching out, especially with the first person pronoun. We also have the use of the phatic expression of pardon that reinforces this hesitancy. He's apologizing for his own mental struggles, taking them on himself and asking for forgiveness about the amount of time he's taking to try and work on them, almost suggesting that he believes himself to be a bother. Finally, Tyler states in the bridge, "If you really want to know what I'm thinking," regarding a question that he's been asked that he has yet to respond to. The use of "really" almost depicts that he doesn't believe anyone actually cares as to what he thinks and feels, which once again adds more evidence to this hesitancy to reach out and get the help he needs from those around him. In conclusion, navigating is about trying to cope with loss and isolation through the unhealthy coping mechanism of disassociation. This only leads to an unbreakable cycle of suffering, and yet despite his desperation to be free of this, he still hesitates to seek help, adding self-imposed isolation to his suffering. And that's it for this video. I gotta say, I know I talked about this last theory video, but I'm just really loving the shorter analyses because I don't think I got another 25-minute one in me. At least probably for another while. Maybe for Paladin, it will come back out. I've just kind of been really busy recently, which is why this video also got pushed back a week later than what it should have been. So hopefully it was worth the wait, because I know a lot of you wanted me to put off analysing the line to get an analysis out on navigating first. You were really adamant about that. Speaking of the line, I do find it kind of funny. Tyler did that little talk before the live stream today, and he was talking about how the line is inspired by loss and death. And it's really funny because I wrote this script before the line came out. Like, the analysis was done before the line came out, and this script was written before the music video came out today. So, I don't know, guys, I'm apparently going to be talking about loss and grief a lot. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching Top Debate!